Okay, we're now moving into a different segment of Plants in Silico. We're from 3 speakers who've really developed a series of computational tools which we believe could be great assets to Plants in Silico. And I think many of you may have seen the simulation driven by the Biochrome model of soybean growing. We had a series of numbers on the productivity of those plants, the heights of the stems, the leaf width, leaf number, node number, etc. Our next speaker's group converted that into something that looks remarkably like our stream of numbers into something that looks remarkably like a real soybean plant. And of course, we could also use that rendering then for ray tracing work as well. So our speaker is Donna Cox. She is the Michael Aiken Chair. She has many awards, but the one that I think really strikes me is she's been selected as one of the 40 modern-day Leonardos. And Donna has been really at the center of computer renderings of many different scientific issues for a number of years, as really one of the founders of this field. And any of you who've seen the film A Beautiful Planet, the simulations based on astrophysics data towards the end of that film come from Donna and her group. With that, I'll hand over to Donna.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Stephen and Rachel and Amy and the teams that we have worked with. Appreciate being here, and a wonderful conference, and thank you. As Stephen said, I've been here at the NCSA for a long time, 31 years actually, this month, and have been doing visualization. Designer, I'm a professor in the School of Art and Design, and I'm currently at NCSA directing the Advanced Visualization Lab, and I'm the theme lead for Culture and Society. And we really believe here that these big problems, especially the problems that plants in silico are addressing today, and in climate change and agriculture and feeding the world, these are what you call grand challenges, or very wicked problems. They're wicked problems because they're very complex. And they really require a lot of people from a lot of disciplines coming together to solve these problems. I want to first and up front give credit to my Advanced Visualization Lab team. A.J. Christensen is on the right. He's been working with Kalina, who's in front. They're wearing stereo glasses, by the way. And we have other members of the team who also consult. And so everything we sort of do is like a team process, and we have been working with the Plants in Silico team. And I'll get toward the end of my talk to, I think, some of the grand challenges that we face within the visualization effort. The Advanced Visualization Lab has a very complex pipeline, and there are people, and we are actually a very small team for the kinds of work that we do. And is there a pointer, or I can just go over here and point? How's that? I'll just use my body. So the data management is almost always some of the most time-consuming part of what we do. And this is the phase that we're at in terms of working with plants in silico. We're also just beginning this phase in which we are developing, we're taking the data and working with the team to really come up with different ways of representing the data. And then at the final end, and what we are planning is to put this data and refine it and visualize the outcome and encapsulate it in a story. So this is part of how we work is first with data, then we create the visual metaphor for the data to represent it, and then we iterate with the science team again and again to refine that visualization and to communicate what the findings are. So this is an anatomy of a tornado. It's a very famous visualization. This over here was published in Wired magazine. This whole visualization, parts of it were used for a PBS Nova show on super twisters. But what we have here is sort of how to represent a volume of data that takes terabytes, and how to represent a tornado, to create through advection, to separate out and color the geometry around a tornado, and then to use color and a legend to signify the different parts and how to understand it. And especially, there is a discovery phase, and I would say in plants in silico, we're at a discovery phase. And eventually, when we worked with this science team at NOAA and Robert Wilhelmsen, it took us a year just to explore the huge amount of data, bringing it together, and representing it. Here we have a tornado, and the spheres themselves are colored by pressure. So the higher the pressure, the redder the color of the spheres. And the geometry that shows the flow around the tornado is being colored by vertical velocity. So the stream tubes that are the lighter blue have the lower. They are essentially going down, and the ones who are colored by orange and yellow are going up. And then we have the ground plane. So we're starting to talk about multi-dimensional representations, and the color of the ground plane is about the temperature at the ground plane of the air. And the bluer the color, the cooler the temperature. And what was important, and always is important in every visualization, is what is the science? What is the scientific question involved? And sometimes it takes iterations with a visualization to even cover what the science is evolving as we are looking at the data. And so in this case, it's what drives a tornado? What are all the components to make a tornado a killer tornado? And then these little icons on the ground plane, the arrow, are like grass blowing in the wind. It's a metaphor, but it's one that people can grasp. So here is the whole picture, the time evolving of an hour in the life of a tornado that's been reduced to 1 minute. And here you have a viewpoint. So it's not just about putting the data off in a box and looking at it. Often you want to get down close to what it is that you're wanting to look at, especially if you want to communicate it. So we have all these components. We don't have here the legend, but we have also the elements to, this was a version that was shown to an animation festival. And what we discovered in the data is this counter-rotating secondary tornado that the scientists didn't had in that data set until we started visualizing it and iterating it, that there were unknowns in the data. And that's where visualization becomes the analysis tool that is possible. Now, when we worked with NCAR to visualize Hurricane Katrina, most of the time we get high-resolution cubes of numbers that are multidimensional with many scalar values at every voxel. And we usually will get graphs that help us try to understand where the scientists are starting to visualize that data. But then we ingest that data into our tools, which I'll describe in just a minute, and what we do are test runs to study the phenomenon. And in this case, the hurricane is passing right by New Orleans. And these are analysis phases that we are in with the science team to understand the anatomy of the hurricane. And always, it seems, there is the simulation box that we have to deal with. And if we want to use that kind of data to incorporate it, we want to modify the viewpoint of how the viewer is going to look at the data. So we have developed tools such as Virtual Director to take a surrogate model of that hurricane and really fly into it to analyze it in real time and to control the viewpoint. That is your audience's view of that phenomenon. So in the end, we use this visualization as part of a digital dome museum show. And here it is narrated by Liam Neeson.
In August 2005, within a huge looping section of the Gulf Stream, the ocean unleashed a monster. Hurricane Katrina. This is a supercomputer model of Katrina, a tool for scientists to better understand the dynamic of the hurricane system.
So this is a carefully scripted story.
To visualize the flow of air into the storm, they release a series of virtual streamers. Those with lighter colors and more winds. As they rise, they collide with cooler air above and produce clouds.
So we develop these trajectories just like
the winds increase the evaporation of warm seawater, which draws more and more heat from the ocean and causes the winds to accelerate. Moving around the eye of the storm, winds can reach speeds of up to 250 kilometers per hour. A powerful hurricane like Katrina can release as much heat energy every 20 minutes as a 10-megaton nuclear bomb. While storms release heat stored in the ocean, the moisture they stir into the atmosphere helps keep the rest of the planet warm. Water vapor traps solar energy, along with carbon dioxide. Since the Industrial Revolution, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has increased nearly 40%. As our impact on the climate has grown, technology is allowing us to take stock of the elaborate interconnected climate systems that protect our world and sustain it.
So again, here is the advanced visualization team, and then here is the science team responsible for this simulation. Now, many of these excerpts that I'm about to show you have been highly polished. We worked for a long time with the science teams to go through a discovery process with interactive tools, and then to come up and develop a type of story around the discoveries in that data. We do today, I've been directing some form of a visualization group for many years, but over the last 10 years, especially last 10 to 15, we have been focused on public outreach to develop these visualizations to get into museum shows such as this. The Hurricane Katrina was in Dynamic Earth. It was really about climate change and all the dynamical processes. We participated in the museum, the California Academy of Science, A Cosmic Story, Life, A Cosmic Story, and then solar superstorms. And California Academy of Science, this is their building, and they have 2 huge domes, and there's millions of people that come through there in a year. And these dome shows travel like Dynamic Earth, and it's been translated into 7 languages, and it is playing all over the world, just like black holes and now solar superstorms, the same story. So I'm going to show you, can you bring the lights down, or at least the lights on me? Thank you. So here is a visual of the beginning of one data set to look at these string tubes developed by Pat Moran at NASA, and then what we were trying to do to integrate them into solar superstorms. And this is work that was done. Robert Stein is a recipient of a Blue Waters a PRAC award. And here is the final visualization. But what this is entailing and how it is relevant to plants in silico is that we have integrated many different data sets together to tell a story. We have NASA data on the periphery. We have a surface of the sun simulation that we brought together and integrated with these plasma and magnetic fields on the interior of the sun to tell this story of where do coronal mass ejections come from. And they come from the interior, but it took more than one simulation to feed into the data to be able to tell this story. So here is, and the one point I want to make is that the visualizations themselves in these shows, in these public outreach shows, are parts of, provided part of a bigger story. And there are illustrations and live action that often provide context for those stories.
A fury is building on the surface of the sun.
This is solar superstorms.
Jets of super hot gas. Rising waves of fire. The most violent explosions in our solar system. Journey into our star. To explore its inner workings. And experience the power of solar superstorms.
So the visualizations for solar superstorms were provided, the funding by the National Science Foundation. Many of the simulations that we incorporated were done on Blue Waters and that type of work. So the point being here with the work in solar superstorms, I'm actually a week from today will be in Washington, D.C. before a Senate committee presenting a screening of solar superstorms about a bipartisan bill to increase funding for a problem that is threatening life as we know it with these solar superstorms that actually can bring down our communications systems and our power grid. And so this is a phenomenon. The story that we co-produced, narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch, tells the importance of that story, and it has become so important that Congress is voting for extra funding for this as an issue. And next week, we get to present this to people on the Hill. And we have also been involved in other science narratives in film, IMAX films in particular, and feature films that relate the issues of relevant issues of science, and they call these films, Stephen, this is what you were talking about, A Beautiful Planet. It really is an important film that we did the data-driven shots at the beginning and ending. Really, the whole film is about climate change and taking the International Space Station views of the planet and demonstrating the impact that human beings are having upon the planet. And they call these films evergreen films because they last for at least years and they're meant to be seen again and again. So finally, I want to just talk about what we're doing with plants in silico and the plans for that. So Kalina Borkowitz has been working with her Houdini data visualization plugin. I thought we had a name for it, Whoviz or something like that. And then AJ has been taking data and working with Houdini and data-driven simulations. Stuart has been consulting. We are working with a lot of collaborators on a plethora of the type of software that we either customize for the problem at hand, ingest data from the scientific teams, and work with the teams to iterate on the development and refinement of the software to solve the problem. Now, with plants in silico, we've got some really big problems here to solve. But I think it's, I think this is worth a dome show in and of itself. I mean, take a look at this. We're going from the very, very small to the very, very big. And each of these areas represent a level of biological life. And what we have are just the beginning studies that we're working with the team to show kind of the race of what happens with plants when they are treated and conditioned differently, and how to visualize that. We're just in the stage of developing the input of data and the metaphors involved, and different kinds of ways of communicating this to the public. And in closing, what I want to say is that visualization is much bigger than just an analytical tool. It is a cultural tool. It is a communication tool. It changes people's minds. It makes the invisible visible. And it functions in society much like the earliest tools in the history of humanity, in that we're still trying to control our surroundings and predict the future. Just as these very early artifacts indicated, we're still doing that today, and we're still doing it with the best technology around for the best purposes. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? It takes a long time, that's obvious. A question that often I get asked. How long does it take to do one of these? A long time.